Hello, everybody. Welcome to um, the session. Good afternoon. Welcome to our Africa Youth Dialogue on the Minamata Convention on Mercury. Um, you're free to turn on your camera. We're going to do a bit of housekeeping before we get into the proper consultation. But we're really thrilled to have you all here. You guys are representing youth delegates, you're representing students, indigenous communities, researchers, and organizations across the African region. Just a bit of a short introduction. My name is Joshua Gabriel Shei. I am from Nigeria and I'm a member of the Chemicals and Waste Youth Coordination Team, where I serve as the thematic focal point on pollution storytelling, right to know, and translation. I'll be one of the moderators for today. And alongside me is Bella. Bella is from Mali and who will introduce himself in a moment. Today's session is co-organized by the Chemicals and Waste Youth Platform and the Global Indigenous Youth Caucus with the support of many partner youth organizations from the Africa region. And you can see some of them on your screen in the slide that's been shared here. This event is a part of a series of events that are identity-based youth consultations that are leading up to the sixth conference of the parties, that is the COP-6 of the Minamata Convention on Mercury, which will take place in just a couple of days or in about 2 weeks next month in Geneva from the 2nd of November to the 7th. Our goal with these consultations is to ensure that youth voices are placed at the heart of decisions that are being made about mercury and toxic pollutions that, of course, affect our health, our rights, and our future. Your contributions to this consultation today through breakout rooms, through speaking on a roundtable or as an opening speaker will help us develop and launch the first ever Global Youth Declaration on Mercury at the COP-6. So we're really excited to hear your ideas, your stories, your recommendations throughout the entirety of the session in the chat box and during our live or interactive breakout rooms. We will be having breakout rooms and speakers across 2 languages, English and French. Live translations are available during the event, so all you need to do is click on the show captions button. It should be at the bottom of your screen if you're joining on an iPad, on mobile, or on a laptop. Click on that button and just select your desired language from the options and then click on save. If you don't see the button, you may need to click on the menu option first. I'm going to turn it over to Bella for a little bit to explain more about the session today, obviously, and the work of the GIYC. Hi, Bella.
Hi everyone.
Hi.
Can
Hi.
you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. That's good. Okay. Let me just. I'm Cisse Bella. I'm from Mali. I'm one of the Africa regional focal point of the Global Indigenous Youth Caucus. The Global Youth Caucus is composed of a number of indigenous youth from diverse states, organizations, and social, economic, cultural backgrounds. Since the first session of the permanent forum since 2006, it is hard to meet daily during the annual session of the permanent forum to discuss the issues of indigenous youth from around the world. This discussion have led to the collective development and presentation of several statements to the forum. I'm very glad to be here today. I think with my colleague Joshua, we will moderate today's sessions. For our session, we will begin our session with opening address from our esteemed speaker from the Minamata Convention Secretariat. The Minamata COP-60 Bureau, as well as some background from the Chemical and Waste Youth Platform on the process so far to build youth engagement in the Minamata Convention. Then we will move the thematic around discussion where we will you hear from different key respondent experts who are youth, international organizations, scientific indigenous people, and civil society network to provide background on Mercury pollution concern for the region and help frame our consultation breakout room. Immediately following each of the around two round table, we will move to interactive break room, which will be in English and French. I'm very glad to be here today. I will pass it back to Joshua to take us through our opening address. Joshua.
Thank you so much, Sissy. I want to say before we get to the opening address, just a few housekeeping notes. Please keep your microphones muted when you're not speaking. You're free to share your reflections or questions in the chat at any time during the entirety of this call. During the breakout sessions, please make sure that you create space for everyone to share their thoughts and not talk over each other. Yes, so thank you again, Bella, for that brief introduction into the JIYC and the program at large. For our opening addresses, I'll be welcoming three speakers. Miss Tabitha Umbutia. She's our focal point at the Chemicals and Waste platform. Mr. Richard Gutierrez. He is the Program Management Officer at the Minamata Secretariat. Mr. Mohamed Abdullahi Kamara, who is the Principal Chemicals Control and Management Officer for EPA Sierra Leone. Thank you so much for joining with the youth from the Africa region today. Tabitha, I will start with you to provide some background on the work that, what youth constituencies and networks have been working on to mobilize youth engagement for the COP-6. The floor is all yours.
Thank you so much, Joshua, for this opportunity. So as has been introduced, I am Tabitha Mbuthia. I am the Human Rights Focal Point for the Chemicals and Waste Youth Platform. So I'll be taking you through the introductory session where I'll talk about what COP-6 is all about and how the youth are taking space in this very important process, and how it is that, the activities rather that we have planned or that are already taking place. So I think we can go to the next slide. Right. So I'll start by introducing the organization that I'm working with, which is the Chemicals and Waste Youth Platform. So this is the world's largest network of youth, children, and youth-led organizations that focuses on policy development and action on hazardous chemicals, waste, and pollution. To that extent, we have over 3,000 plus youth organizations and individuals, which is an amazing, amazing accomplishment since our inception in February 2021. So our main goal with this regards is to ensure that we build long-term, meaningful, and youth engagement in the work of the UN chemicals, waste, and pollution, as well as to improve the coordination across youth NGOs accredited to BRS, GFC, as well as Minamata. Next slide, kindly. Right. So what you can see on your screen is the youth constituencies that work with the United Nations. The Chemicals and Platform, which is the second one here, is also under the also works under UNEP, but specifically under the Chemicals and Waste idea, right? So we work with the BRS COPs, the Minamata COPs, as well as the ICCM 5. So that means that we work with UNEP, the BRS, Secretariat, the Minamata, CICAM, or the Global Framework on Chemicals. And see here is a whole list of the youth constituencies we also work that are also under the United Nations, mostly with UNEP. So for example, with biodiversity, we know that Global Youth on Biodiversity Network, or climate change, we have Yongo, desertification and land, we have UNCCD, environmental governance, we have the Children and Youth Major Group, PUNEA, and the rest. So there are different constituencies depending on what you're focusing on. So since our work or our task here is mainly on the Minamata Convention, then definitely the CWYP will definitely take root. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so we have taken part in a lot of conferences and in a lot of processes since we started from 2021 up to now. The first picture, as you can see here, is from when we had gone to the BRS COP early in the year, I think in June, in Geneva. The second one is the ICCM5 that happened, I think, in 2023, if I'm not wrong. But these are just pictures of just showing you the number of youth that we have that always attend these conferences. So yes, as our mandate is to ensure that we are mobilizing children and youth voices in the United Nations Chemicals and Waste Pillar. Right, we can move to the next slide. Okay, so what you can see on the screen right now is what we had called for, youth registration support and travel grants. So we wanted to fund several youth participants to join us in Geneva next month so that we can participate wholly in COP-6. So we had over 400 applicants who had registered for this. And out of the 400, we are currently funding and sponsoring 21 youth to the COP-6 in Geneva next month. That's a great accomplishment. Unfortunately, right now it's already closed, but yeah, it's just one of those things that we have to celebrate and something that we're all looking forward to. And next slide, kindly. Right. So it's equally important that I make the announcement on the first youth forum on mercury pollution, which shall take place during the COP-6, specifically on 2nd November. So this is a very important event that shall happen on the first day of 6, where we will bring the youth, the parties to ensure that we are being heard and our voices are being heard, just so that we have a united voice when we do bring in our Global Youth Declaration to have a very united voice. Furthermore, we also have a Mercury Youth Task Force, which is being led by the Chemicals and Waste Youth Platform, as well as the Global Youth Indigenous Caucus, which works under the Minamata Convention. So this Mercury Youth Task Force is comprised of over 60 youth constituencies, organizations, as well as individuals who are very, very interested, like you and I, in the Minamata Convention and every other process that takes place in it. So if you'd love to join, kindly to join us. There's a lot that's happening with this task force. There's a link as well as a code here that you can always so that you can just join us and continue with this discussion after this. So this is definitely open to anyone who's interested, any organizations, any youth person. Kindly, you can always join us, so please do. So yeah, that is the engagement that we've had so far. We can continue to the next. Yeah, so I think I will send the link to the chat so that everyone has access after this. Okay, so we also have the youth preparations for COP-6, or the Minamata RPMs, or the Mercury Youth Task Force meetings. So this is what happened, I think, in the course of this month for the regional meetings. So, for example, the first one was in Europe. The first one was in Europe. The second one was in RULAC. The other one was in Asia. We also had our African regional meeting that happened from 7th to 9th of October this month. And well, having been there, I can attest that it was an amazing experience where the states came together to discuss how it is that they are going to, go about the agenda items that we have for COP-6 so that Africa has a united voice. Now, our work as the Chemicals and Waste Youth Platform was to ensure that there is the essential text of the inclusion of youth as well as children in the text at all points, because unfortunately, we are the most affected, yet least heard. So we made an intervention to the same, which was received. And yeah, it was quite an amazing experience. I think I'd also want to add that we were also being trained on how to draft these documents, which was quite amazing. But yeah, it was quite an experience. But what I can say is that the member states are definitely open, and they're very willing to support the youth and our work. And to most of the global, rather to most of the states that I talked to, they were very open and they were very supportive of what we are doing, what we are seeking for, and all these things. So yeah, with regards to Africa, we have a very great following, and the states definitely support us because, as I said, as most of them said, that it works in their interest to actually have us on the table and to listen to us. So perhaps you can go to the next slide, kindly. Right. So I think one last thing that I needed to say was that we are going to be having a youth booth or a youth exhibit during the COP-6, which is quite amazing because if we'll have about 21 plus youth at Geneva next month, then definitely you can expect that we'll have a big delegation, perhaps one of the biggest, and having that youth exhibit to just show what we're doing, how chemicals, how mercury affects us, how mining and all these things affect us, and how it is that we are forming solutions. The organizations are doing so much work on these issues. Just having to show parties what that looks like, because in most cases you will realize that most of them look at these issues from a theoretical point of view rather than from a practical point of view. So what we want to show them is practically how are the decisions that are going to be made during the COP-6 are actually affecting youth and children on the ground, you know? So bringing what everyone is doing and how this affects the youth to the global stage. And so that's a very exciting thing that most of us are really looking forward to doing. And yeah, thank you so much. So I will send the links to the chats as so that you can join the work that we're doing and just to see what else that we can be doing. But yes, thank you so much, Finiti. Over to you, Gabriel.
Thank you so much, Tabitha, for that, giving us that overview of the work that CWYP is doing, the Minamata Task Force, and of course, we will be sharing the links to the chat on how to join the Mercury Youth Task Force, so just to access relevant information ahead of the COP-6. Next, we have Mr. Gutierrez from the Minamata Secretariat. Just to give us a little bit of an insight into the Minamata Convention itself and what it is that's coming up for Minamata COP-6.
Hi, Gabriel. Thanks. Off the bat, there's a typo on the. Seems like there's a typo on the on the date. There are only 31 days in October and not 64. So please ignore that. In any case, welcome and thank you so much for having me. I'm really glad that the Chemicals and Waste Youth Platform is mobilizing and organizing these very, very useful regional meetings. So the Secretariat welcomes these types of efforts, especially coming from and sort of recognizing youth voices and sort of channeling and focusing that, especially towards our convention called the Minamata Convention on Mercury. Next slide, please. So again, thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here. Let me tell you about our convention. Some of you might know about it already, so this might function as a reminder. But for those of you who are new to this issue, it's my pleasure to just sort of give you a quick rundown of what the Minamata Convention is and why youth voices are relevant. So the picture in front of you, as you can see, is a picture of a fetus, and you might be wondering why I'm starting with that. When I started my work with on the issue of mercury, I often wondered where did the issue come from. One would normally associate it with the place called Minamata. So Minamata is a village in northeastern or north, yes, northeastern Japan, where this sort of terrible poisoning happened, where a fertilizer factory started dumping mercury into the bay, contaminating the seafood, and that became such a huge issue that precipitated this global movement and global awareness on mercury as a toxic substance. But when you look at it in much more deeper, the story of Minamata is not really about the place, but it's really about a myth. And that myth is the belief back in the 1950s and earlier that the blood placental barrier, and where the babies are, where the fetus is formed, etc., um, is impervious to diseases or to any toxins. So before the Minamata disease came about, medical professionals thought that the fetus, the baby in the womb, is protected from external sources, that no poison can penetrate that barrier. So one of the things that the Minamata did was to change that and bring to a new reality, both in medical science as well as into the consciousness of the world, that the blood placental barrier is not impervious to toxins, but in fact, it is very susceptible to it, and there is great impact in the development of the fetus. So, if one takeaway I would like you to have in this opening remark is really that Minamata is not a place. It's us. It's people, and it starts at the womb. Next slide, please. Next, you have the symbol of mercury, Hg. It's a basic element in the periodic table. That has such a profound impact in terms of this toxin because as a naturally occurring element, it's present all around us and it cannot be destroyed by any chemical means. So it goes into the next slide because of its very nature. If you can go to the next slide, please. And its impact on health, as I just briefly mentioned. The Minamata Convention was negotiated and adopted in October 2013, and the objective is to protect human health and the environment from mercury and mercury compounds. So this is what the convention looks like. And the name Minamata was, of course, taken from the Minamata village where the poisoning happened to make sure that the Minamata never happens again. And also to bring forth memory and legacy of those victims to drive us forward in our work. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the next slide you will see is the health impacts. So I just wanted to emphasize here, although we talk about human health impacts, it's not just for humans. It also affects biodiversity. It affects wildlife in a variety of ways, at times similar to how it impacts human. So if it affects our if it affects our system, both neurological, etc., there's also likewise similar impacts that you can see and observable in wildlife and also in biodiversity. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to, this slide just sort of hopefully helps you understand in a very simple way some of the stuff that I've been talking about. And if I were to summarize why mercury is so important and why there has been a global action and movement towards it, is first, it's persistent. As I mentioned, it's a naturally occurring element, cannot be destroyed by any chemical means. Because of its persistence, it's also bioaccumulative and biomagnifies. So this is where you have the issues of seafood, aquatic organisms, starting from small krills, et cetera, it biomagnifies into the larger organisms. And for humans, as the top predator, we bioaccumulate the mercury. And that's where the bioaccumulative nature of mercury becomes a danger, especially for women of childbearing age or pregnant mothers, as well as children, because it starts and affects the development. Then I've mentioned already toxicity. And the last thing that is of importance is its transboundary nature. Mercury does not respect borders, and it will impact large swaths of areas where, and not simply where the community or village it was released or dumped. Next slide, please. The next slide that you will see is just an overview of the convention. Pay attention to the middle slide, the control measures. The unique nature of the Minamata Convention is that it attempts to capture or at least control mercury in its full life cycle. So the light gray provisions on your left are provisions that intend to keep mercury underground. Mercury is a naturally occurring element, it's mined. So the only way to extract mercury is by mining. So there's measures to keep it underground. The middle part that you will see in dark gray are measures to ensure use, trade are properly controlled from emissions and releases and minimizing that as well as contaminated sites. And the amber colored measures are measures to prevent on ASGM, also on emissions and releases. So next slide, please. I won't go into the details and you can have a wonderful time reading through that once the slide's shared with you. Here is just sort of the many applications of mercury that's been used across the various times. So from this is more recent, but you probably heard of the Mad Hatter disease from Alice in Wonderland. The Mad Hatter became mad just because of the mercury exposure that he used. And of course, in some traditions or cultures, this has been very much ingrained in medicinal use, etc. But the pictures here that I am showing you are what has been covered by, or what we call mercury added products that the convention has covered, and it has phased these out. So as you can see, even though we're a young convention, the convention is working. Next slide, please. So there are aspects of the convention where it's working, particularly when you look at this particular slide. These are emissions of mercury, which is the toughest things that we're trying to grapple with. From non-ferrous metals production, cement production, coal burning. You're very familiar with coal burning, waste incineration. But the highlight and big factor, at least for the Africa region, would be the issue where artisanal and small-scale gold mining. It's the largest emitter of mercury globally, around 37%, emitting at least 2,000 metric tons of mercury, at least approximation, per year. Artisanal small-scale gold mining is highly widespread in Africa. Out of the 35 national action plans on addressing ASGM, more than half are coming from Africa. And of the 50 notifications to the Secretariat where ASGM is considered more than insignificant because of the mercury use in this sector, more than half of the 50, at least 35, I think, is coming from Africa. So this is a very critical issue for your region. But next slide, please. It's not just ASGM that's an issue. So the convention recognizes youth in its preamble, in its Annex C on ASGM, as well as the amendments to Annex A Part 2. Excuse me. So where does it all lead to? Next slide. It all leads down to the role of youth in the Minamata Convention of Mercury. I've outlined to you how youth is impacted, where the products are, the regional problem that you're facing. And I think the critical part of, at least what I'm trying to open for you is that the role of youth is very critical in the convention, and that the voices need to be heard from the stakeholder. And it's important to establish engagement processes and identify where youth voices can be directed, and it can also participate towards a more robust representation within the convention. And that role and in that pathway is up to you. The Secretariat can provide information and understanding of the convention, but your active participation will be determined by you, the youths, and where you want to focus on. So with that slide, I come to my last slide. Next slide, please. Since the convention attempts to address the life cycle of mercury, we go back to. I want to end my presentation with the picture of the globe, because this is us. This is all us, and as long as humans continue to use mercury, the contamination will continue, and we will not be true to what we set out to do in understanding the legacy of the people in Minamata, and making sure that we together, especially with the voices and action of the youth, take action to make sure that Minamata does not happen, and then that Minamata does not pollute anyone moving forward. So with that, I end my presentation. Thank you very much for listening. And for those of the 21 youth groups or youth representatives, I look forward to seeing you in Geneva. Have a great day and have a great discussion. Back to you, Gabriel.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gutierrez. I'm sure those 21 people representing our different constituencies, the CWYP and the CWYP, are excited to be in Geneva as well and contribute to this discourse. We have the pleasure of hearing from Mr. Mohamed Kamara. He is the co-chair of the Africa COP-6 regional preparatory meetings, and would like to hear some thoughts about the conclusions that we made during the regional preparatory meeting, and any insights that you have, sir, for young people here with us who are preparing for the next month and who are trying to bring their voices to COP6. So, Mr. Mohamed.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Mohamed Abdullahi Kamara. I'm working for the Environment Protection Agency, Sierra Leone. I'm the national focal point for the Minamata Convention on Mercury, serving as bureau member for the African region and co-chair for the region as well. I want to say thank you to the Root Group for giving me this opportunity to add my voice in this fight, making Mercury history. Is my honor and privilege. I'll be short, precise, and to the thoughts. I don't have a presentation. I'll give a free speech. And if we look at the life cycle of Mercury, we find out that the youths are very, very critical in the implementation of the convention and in eliminating mercury. Most governments, especially African governments, yes, their priority, their task, their mandate is to create employment, to create jobs, especially for the youths who are the workforce. But one of the key challenges is that they always tend to forget the safety, the health safety, the health and environmental safety of creating these jobs as well. And this is very, very important. It's not just about creating jobs, it's also about safety issues. How safe these jobs are to the workers, how safe those jobs are to the environment, which is very, very paramount. And throughout the life cycle, youths are very, very important. Youths are the workforce for every entity, whether be it manufacturing, mining company, they are the workforce. And when you come to the end user aspect also, a larger percentage of the end users of mercury added products are youths. When you consider the ASGM, which has been identified as the major source of mercury emissions, those who involved in ASGM, 99% of them are youths. So that's why I'm very happy to see the youth group involving in the fight to eliminate mercury. Congratulations for that. And as an African region, I want to assure you that we always support you in whatever you needed to do. So this is very, very important. The youths involved directly in manufacturing, in mining, in using the mercury added products. All of these aspects, the youth are the centerpiece of it. So it means for us to have a successful implementation of the Minamata Conventions, the youths are very, very key. For us to able to eliminate mercury, the youths are very, very key. For us not to succeed in the implementation of the convention, the youths contribute greatly. For us not to succeed in making Mercury history, the youths contribute greatly. So, seeing short groups coming up, stand up to join forces together to see that Mercury is make history, is made history, is a very, very, very appreciable idea. I want to assure you that the African region is there for you to give your support. Whatever help needed, you rest assured you get that help. The youths are very, very key, are very are integral parts in the implementation of this convention. We held a meeting in Nairobi, the African regional meetings, and key decisions has been taken. One, in the mercury added products, most especially dental amalgam. We want to push that we have a phase out date for dental amalgam, which is proposed to be 2030. And we make provisions for the youths to voice out their positions too. I think two of them made a statement in that area. We also took a decision in SLPs, skin lightening products, lightnings. We also consider the amendment of Article 7 for the ASGM. We find out that there are loopholes that we need to address that the convention fails to capture in its adoption. So we are proposing for amendment of Article 7 as well. And the mercury waste threshold also, we also took a decision on the mercury thresholds and so many others. Of course, capacity building. As far as capacity is concerned, Africa is lagging behind. So we need capacity building. And in that capacity building, I think also the youth will be the larger percentage that will benefit. Because when it comes to training, implementation, laboratory issues, testing, analysis, all these people are youth that will be involved. So in that respect, I want to say thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to address in this meeting. Once more, we look forward to meet in Geneva and participate in your booths. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kamara. Thank you so much to all of our speakers for that insight. And I think it is telling that we've had a bit of an intergenerational line of opening speakers who are really excited for youth involvement, both here in this consultation and also physically in Geneva over the next couple of weeks. I will now be giving the mic to Howard. Howard is focal point of the Chemicals and Waste Youth platform. He will be guiding us through our best interactive activity. For those of you who are familiar with Mirrorboard, we'll be having a bit of a session here for a couple of minutes. And those of you who have questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or note them down, and during the breakout rooms, we'll address those questions. Thank you. So Howard, those are yours.
Right. Thank you very much, Joshua. So now we are going to move to the Miro board. And so if you're new to the Miro board, do not be afraid, do not be concerned. It's very simple. You just have to scan the QR code on your screen, and then it will get you to that interface. And just to take us back to one of the objectives of our consultations today, to gather African youth perspectives and recommendations as input to the Global Youth Declaration on Mercury, even as we prepare for COP-6. So please do scan that QR code on your screen, and it will lead you to that interface and give you access to the board. And once you have done that, you will see that the number of sticky notes, let me just do it with you. So I give you direct instructions. Okay. Okay, great. So as we do that, in the interest of giving as many people an opportunity to share their thoughts, you can also raise your hand at this point to just share with us. Again, to give you an opportunity to share with us what you think, where you think Mercury hides in everyday life across Africa. And speaking from your context, you can just raise your hand, and then we can give you the opportunity for you to get to share your thoughts and to just tell us more about the outlook of Mercury in your country or where you're best across the continent. Okay, so do shoot your hand up, and then we'll give you the opportunity to share with us, even as yes, I see water, I see, so let's continue to do that as well. And there's also an opportunity, Jafar, please go ahead and unmute.
I'm trying to unmute myself.
Yes, we can hear you now. Go ahead.
Hear me, sir. Okay, thank you very much. My name is Jafar Umar. I'm from Nigeria, and it's my pleasure being here. So first, I will recommend the effort, the consistency, and dedication by your team. I pray for more blessings and more knowledge. So I've been waiting. I was so amazed to be part of this meeting. So thank God for today, and thank God for you people. So I just want to share some experience regarding to the Mercury. Let me call it exploitation to the environment, because I'm precisely in Adamawa State now, whereby we have some solid minerals extraction companies which are even mining illegally. So recently there was a case that was brought up from the state government down to the federal government, or let me say up to the federal government. A lot of people, even the flood, you understand, a lot of damages, a lot of things that happen. But the little issue we are having is the knowledge. The knowledge is not there. The youth are not participating in this let me call it this awareness of letting people know what is all about the Mercury. How are we going to prevent ourselves? How are we going to make our environment to be hygienic and understand those problems?
Yeah.
Because if we understand the problems, we have gotten at least 75% or 80% of the answer. So the first thing I think my suggestion we have to understand is, how are we the youth going to understand more? Because it is because of the meeting I now go back and start making research on, okay, what is this Mercury? How does how Mercury affect the environment, and a lot of things which, let me not make a lot of noise, so that I'll give others. So please, I would like to suggest, if the slides, you can be able to slides and some documents in the group that will help studying this, passing the knowledge down to our local environments and a lot of things. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Sir.
thank you so much, Jafar. Indeed, all the material will be availed to you after our consultation, the presentation, and everything that you need. And of course, we remain available to engage and to share more information on the Minamata Convention, but also when it comes to the youth participation, when it comes to chemicals and waste under the Chemicals and Waste Youth platform. So thank you so much. So as we prepare to wrap up, I would like to take on some other hands. So please do. I saw about 2 other hands. I see them now, but please do raise them again so we can give you the opportunity to share with us. And Jafar, I want to encourage you to also share some of those thoughts that you've shared. You can share them on the Miro board as well, Jafar. Unless you have something else you would like to share, would like to invite someone else. Princess.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm not sure if we're all in the same time zone, so good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Sorry, I haven't been able to access Miro, so I haven't been able to add anything there. But yeah, the responses are spot on, because I was also going to talk about, Mercury hiding in the air, water, soil, and obviously seeing that with Mercury, it's seen as an important use when it comes to artisanal and small scale gold mining, which I think one of the speakers previously did mention that it's prevailing, especially in developing countries, which is unfortunate. And one disadvantage here, of course, is if we want to reduce mining of mercury, that is going to impact millions of livelihoods, right? Because we have a lot of these miners relying on, mining these things so that they can be able to have like a way of living for them to be able to provide for their families. So for me, my question is, if we're going to, of course, it's important to limit the mining of mercury. If we're going to do that, how then are these, how then are local people, let me just say local people, going to be supported if they're not going to, let's say, be in such jobs, right? So then what steps are being taken aside from, yes, these policies, this convention saying we need to stop this? What steps are being taken to ensure that livelihoods are not affected? Because of course we do acknowledge that there are other impacts, like environmental impacts, health impacts, but then how are these people going to be supported? And then another thing again is, I do acknowledge that young people have a huge role to play here. But aside from us talking about young people playing a huge role, what resources are being provided to the youth for them to be able to have the ability, to voice out, for them to be able to have the ability to advocate for these things, right? Because one main issue, especially in developing countries, is access. We talk about young people have the ability to, we have a voice, we have this and that. But what about access? Because there's that inequality there with a lot of people from developed countries have so much opportunities and access to be able to advocate for change, right? So then you see so much change there. But with people from developing countries, there's that lack of, sorry, I've spoken a lot, but yeah, those are some of the key issues that, I'd like to.
Yeah, thank you, Princess. I love the passion with which you're sharing with us your thoughts and very critical questions there. So we're going to give Josephine and Fionise just about 1 minute or so each, so we can wrap up this section. But thank you so much, this segment. But thank you so much. I see the great thoughts and feedback on the mural board. So I'm going to invite Josephine 1 minute and Fionise for just 1 minute, and then we'll wrap this up, this segment up. But thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. It's really just amazing to see the different input that you have made across the 3 questions, and we've captured that and we'll be able to embed that. So I'll invite Josephine 1 minute so you can share your thoughts, and then Fionise as well.
Okay, thank you very much for the opportunity, and a good day to everyone. Please, am I being heard?
Yeah, we can hear you. Go ahead, Josephine.
Okay, so I'm Josephine, and I'm a high school graduate in Ghana, and I find this initiative very interesting. First off, in a country such as Ghana in sub-Saharan Africa, it's quite disturbing to find out that illegal mining has become more rampant day by day. We have different political parties coming promising that things are going to be better, but all we see is that things get worse, turbidity levels increase, and the level of mercury found in our soils would keep rising. It's even been so much so that the world market rejected our cocoa production, or our cocoa produce, at some point in time. Now, in a country like this, where the youth have had several peaceful demonstrations about illegal mining and how the politicians and the people in power should have compassion and should be more understanding about our future and about the environment. But here's the case where nothing is being done. Nothing is being done. We've had a lot of conferences, a lot of theories, but nothing is actually being done in reality. So I want to find out how plausible the COP-6 is going to be. Is it just going to be merely theoretical? Because if you look at the UN like this, majority of the SDG goals, now the time frame, is by 2030. But then it's been postponed. And who knows, maybe 2030, they might postpone it again to 2050.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Josephine. Wow, that's amazing to hear your perspective from Ghana, but also on the critical questions of going forward when it comes to implementation of these aspirations. So I'll give Theonis just 1 minute to just share your thoughts with us, and then we'll wrap this up. I see some more hands, but in the interest of time, we might not be able to take on more time, but I invite you to share your reflections and thoughts on the mirror board, and we'll capture them just right. Okay, great. So thank you so much, friends, for sharing your thoughts with us, those that have been able to raise their hands and share with us, but also those that have taken off time to take the sticky notes and respond to the 3 questions. And I would like to thank you. It's really amazing to get to see the different thoughts and inputs that you have made across all the 3 questions, and also to see, for example, some of the cost-cutting issues with artisan and small-scale miners in the local communities, but also in the manifestation in water and soil and in the skin lightening creams. These cost-cutting outlook across the continent. Thank you so much. At this point, I would like to give us just about a minute to conclude. I see some movements as well across the board. And then once we are done, I would like to invite Joshua back so we can proceed to the next segment. Thank you so much, friends, for sharing your thoughts. I'd like to hand the mic back to Joshua to lead us back to the next segment. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Howard. Great segment. I think it's always great to hear from youth on how Mercury is affecting them, and just collating these many diverse opinions on the mirror board, which would in fact inform the Global Youth Declaration on Mercury that we're working on. So without further ado, I will be moderating the roundtable discussion on intergenerational perspectives on key Mercury challenges and priorities in the Africa region. I would like to first invite Mr. Desmond to give his perspective really on key Mercury insights in the Africa region and how that's affecting these communities. Mr. Desmond, sorry, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you so much, Joshua, and thanks to all the previous speakers who have talked on this topic. I'm happy to be stepping in the position for the Green Africa Youth Organization. My colleague Jacob couldn't be here, but he sends his greetings. So Mercury, especially in West Africa, because you cannot speak about this without talking about the artisanal mining that a lot of people have already alluded to. The key challenge when it comes to young people is that the young people are actually the actors. You see, these are the primary actors. These are the hands in the soil. These are the people engaged in the mining activity. So they have direct contact with the chemical. And at the same time, this goes into the food they handle, because as they are in the forest, in most cases, doing the mining, they use the same hands to eat. So before it pollutes the water, before it gets into the food chain, they already ingest this directly. Now, in Ghana's case in particular, the concerns that led to some of the recent news that the country is stepping up steps to eliminate mercury usage in mining is started with people reporting and doctors complaining about so much kidney failures and other cardiovascular issues traced to heavy metals, some of which mercury was top on the list. Now, the people who benefit from the gold, the actual corporations that are getting richer and richer by the day, you don't see them or their children in the soil. You don't see them directly. So they become the invisible hand, far away from the grounds, but then they are putting all these young lives at risk. Like Josephine mentioned, there's been several processes, demonstrations here and there, but at the same time, the corporates and the big guys, quote unquote, who are behind all this evil also have their way of counter campaigning, utilizing language as job creation, putting people out of job, and what have you. And this somehow have gotten stuck also in young people's minds. So you have the same young people who are the victims also defending the act because they think that this is the way the government is providing jobs for them. They think that this is the way the system can take care of them. So it becomes a very complicated web whereby those of us who are advocating then become like the evil we are seeing sometimes as the people who are standing in their way. So when you talk about, yes, just transition we need, but this is not how you get, for example, a country to grow its GDP and upgrade the lifestyle of its citizens. This is not just transition. This doesn't fit in anywhere as far as just transition is concerned. Even if you wanted to ignore the environmental damages that this comes with. And then the cumulative impact of this is that there is pressure on health facilities, there is pressure on agriculture produce, and ultimately the climate impact gets worsening by the day. I'm happy that in this call, there are so many actors that are speaking about the same issue of Mercury. But the question that I would have wished to be answered in this case, if we actually had some of the teams present as this session is labeled intergenerational dialogue, would have been to really understand where do we stand in terms of access, in terms of providing the means for these young people to have alternative livelihood empowerment, whereby they will have the voice to say no to some of these acts, whereby they will have the voice to stand for themselves and not get involved just because they are vulnerable and someone else is taking advantage of them. These are questions that young people cannot answer because they are the victims here. But I do hope that at COP-6, some of these will be answered. I turn the ball back to you, Joshua.
Thank you so much, Desmond. As somebody who is a storyteller, I think I really loved how you were able to connect the issue of Mercury and the struggles that we face with, getting youth out of spaces where Mercury affects them, but being unable to do so because we have very peculiar perspective on it as people from sub-Saharan Africa, particularly where governments say some things and don't necessarily do those things, and young people are made to think that the way that they approach Mercury is the only way. So thank you again so much for that. I'm now going to bring on Mr. Niveen Reddy. Niveen, I would like you to share your perspectives as well. I know you've had a long flight before this. I apologize, but I'm so happy you got to join us still.
Thanks, Joshua, and hello, everyone. Good to be with you all here today. I think my colleague Desmond covered quite a lot of this, and I think this is a really timely conversation to address what is a quite critical issue at hand. I think the speakers before mentioned the persistent nature of mercury, and once it is actually generated in the environment, it's very difficult or impossible to get out. And its impact is something that lingers. And I think that's something at Gaia and with the members that we work with is a philosophy that we believe in quite clearly. We are an alliance that works around the implementation of zero-waste systems and fundamentally looking at something that is the prevention of waste generation rather than trying to find a cure for it once it is created. And I think that's quite critical, even with mercury. It's how do we prevent the generation and exposure at the start. I want to maybe share an example from South Africa, where I'm from. I'm from Durban, and just maybe 20 kilometers from Durban, there was a mercury recycling facility that was called Thor Chemicals. And it's quite an interesting example of waste colonialism, where this British company that's registered in the UK and had been operating in the UK, recycling mercury, But in the late 80s, when the UK started developing stricter standards for air quality, they were no longer compliant with this and then opted to take their entire facility and move it to South Africa. And within a few years, they had been taking in mercury sludge and waste and spent mercury catalyst. And we saw a high amount of workers becoming poisoned with mercury. Not just the contamination of it, but it started creating a legacy impact in that community. And it was very clear that this was not just about mercury recycling. This was about making money. And as Desmond mentioned, there's corporates, there's people around behind this that are also there just to profit from this entire sector. And this was a clear example of that, where it was not about recycling this hazardous substance. It was about bringing in more of it so that they could make money out of it. Eventually, this happened, in the late 1980s, early 1990s, and the legacy impact still exists today. Not only were workers poisoned, many of them died. The legacy impact it left is that a lot of those people that got sick could not get work anywhere else. They were left, to be almost disadvantaged for their entire adult life, not being able to find adequate work. But this facility itself is still had been storing mercury on site. And as the years passed, the drums in which it was stored in started corroding and started polluting local water sources. So this entire community has created a sick population within that community, where the young people who had to rely on the water sources or farming on nearby lands had to be exposed to its impacts over their entire life. So currently we have this place now, which is entirely a contaminated land within South Africa. One thing I will say is Desmond talked about the just transition and thinking about how people need to have access to jobs, but also safe jobs that are not going to put their lives at risk. And in this way, this was a very clear example of how this was detrimental to people's health and well-being in the name of profit for a few. Lastly, I'll just say that on a more positive note, there is that the workers that had elevated levels or too sick to work, there have been a case that came through where those workers will be compensated for the pollution. And I think this is maybe just one example of waste colonialism that exists in South Africa. But, pretty much, I think the previous speaker talked a bit about how waste incineration itself is also an emitter of mercury. And that is something we see quite prominently here in Africa, not just in formal facilities that burn waste, but in the open burning of waste itself, which is quite common throughout most parts of Africa, if not every part of Africa, where we have limited services for waste collection. And the constituents of that waste depends. In Ghana, there is the dumping of electronic waste, which often is burnt and has emitting high levels of heavy metals as well. So this is undoubtedly an intergenerational issue, but also something that has no borders whatsoever. So I'll leave it there. Thank you, Joshua. Pass it back to you.
Thank you so much, Niven. I am looking forward to the conversations that we're going to have next in the breakout rooms that we're about to join. I think what has been said by our speakers, from the opening speakers to you, to our session with the mirror board, I really would love to hear from these young people present here and what you're thinking. You would see that there are breakout rooms that you can join. Every single one of them is facilitated by a different person. There are two kinds of breakout rooms. There are French breakout rooms and English breakout rooms. You have an open discussion in these breakout rooms for about 20 minutes. And then we'll return to the main room and have a discussion on what it is that was talked about in those rooms. So breakout rooms should be open a little bit. You would see like a pop-up on your screen, and you should click on the language you prefer, and then you get taken to the relevant breakout room. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a great breakout session. Welcome. Almost everyone's back. So without further ado, I will be moving on to our second roundtable, which is themed around connecting Minamata Convention goals to Africa's land restoration and food systems agenda. As we know, one of the most prevalent impacts of mercury is on agriculture, actually, and access to food. And so we have an expert panel who will be sharing their experiences with us. So with that, I'm going to welcome to the table Juliet Grace Luede. Juliet is the global focal point for the UNCCD Youth Caucus. We have Wari Dilson Nke. Wari is a youth association for climate action member. We have a message actually from Lydia Halidi, who is a biologist and waste management specialist. And finally, we have Brendan Tabe. Brendan is from Act for Food and the African Forest Forum, and of course, is also a National Geographic Young Explorer. So with that said, I will like to give Juliet the floor to share a little bit about her experiences and perspectives on how we are connecting the Minamata Convention goals to Africa's land restoration and food systems agenda.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning for everyone that is joining. As introduced, my name is Juliet Grace Luede, and I am the global focal point for the UNCCD Youth Caucus. For those who don't know what UNCCD is the United Nations Convention to combat desertification and drought. So basically, as a convention, the work that we are doing is around restoration of land. How do we also ensure that degraded land is not looked at, there's a new term I learned to use for it, as a lost cause, because oftentimes when you think about degraded land, you're thinking about it, oh, nothing good can come out of it, right? Nothing productive can ever come out of it. But realistically speaking, when you're looking at degraded land, what leads us to that place? How do we end up with degraded land? How do we end up in such dispensation? So within the Rio Conventions, if you've heard of UNFCCC, which looks at climate change, UNCBD, which looks at biodiversity, the UNCCD convention is that convention that is forgotten. No one knows about, no one ever talks about, but it equally plays a crucial role. You can't talk about biodiversity protection and leave out issues of land. You can't talk about climate action and actually equally forget about land issues as well. So for today's conversation and the question that Joshua would like for me to actually be able to respond to, how do we connect the Minamata Convention goals to Africa's land restoration and food systems agenda? I think the first place to start with is the why, right? Where are the clear linkages between the Minamata Convention and Africa's land restoration agenda, right? When we're talking about Mercury, we are always thinking about the artisan aspect of it. And for this, I'll speak from the aspect of Uganda, where gold mining is one key thing that is happening within the Karamoja region and other regions of the country. So you're looking at it from that one hotspot, and you're forgetting that in this hotspot where, for example, gold mining is happening, people are also growing food. And even in the breakout room that I was in, the English one, people mentioned this as one of the examples of things that are happening. Things like SGM does contaminate soils and rivers, which makes, for example, in the instance of rivers or lakes, fish that feeds the community then disappears. What that results into food waste, or also at the same time, there isn't enough food for communities to be able to feed on too, right? But the other thing is the products and waste as a result of mercury, which is, I would say, farm to market leakages. The phasing out of mercury added products like lamps, batteries, devices, or even its proper disposal, it always ends up in land. And this is me trying to make the connection of the Minamata Convention to the UNCCD Convention. When these products are disposed of, they're dumped inland. When they come to land, that means that they directly affect the farmland and also the market waste streams. These contaminated sites and releases to land, which again happen within the Minamata Convention or framework. This provides for guidance on how to identify how redeeming of mercury contaminated sites can play a crucial role when it comes to the restoration of agro-food systems, of our spaces into which we grow food. But again, I'm trying to link this back into the question that Joshua asked. What role do we play when it comes to Africa's land restoration and food systems agenda? Africa grows food that feeds literally the entire world. So if we have contaminated lands as a result of mercury, that means there's going to be food shortages. So the onus now is on us as African people to ensure that our degraded land or our contaminated lands are restored so that we are able now to continuously grow food. In the aspect of the UNCCD convention that I work directly with, every single day 1 hectare of land is degraded. And I'm just looking at it from the aspect of just land degradation, leaving out the aspect of mercury. 1 hectare of land is degraded. And that's why now we have forums like the Great Green Wall, whose work is how do we restore this degraded land, which is natural homes for also mercury restoration, which also requires smart restoration pilots and indicators. That's what things like projects like the Great Green Wall is doing. When you look at the African Union Agri-Food Strategy of 2026 to 2035, the new 10-year plan on resilient agri-food systems is a policy window to mainstream also the Minamata actions when it comes to food safety and also clean value chains. All this to say is that there is clear linkages, not just within the Minamata Convention, but then also how also other players can come to support. When it comes to the aspect of us as young people, I would say, and again, I'm already preaching to the already converted because these things and you're already doing the work around mercury safe restoration zones when it comes to our landscapes, where already young people are innovating around mercury-free processing tech, tailoring stabilization and buffers that ensure that, yes, while we already have challenges happening within our ecosystem, how do we ensure that we restore from our side, but then also aligning our efforts and the work that we are doing on ground at national level to actually also align within the Minamata, let's say, national adaptation plans, or even the project sites that are happening, right? So stabilizing of degraded land and hectares as well, or even making sure that farmer incomes increase, not at the expense of human life, or because again, without food, human life is hindered as well. And then I'm going to start to end this off with on a last note. We have some quick wins as African youth that we can already take play. For example, this consultation that's going to feed into the upcoming COP-6, where we're convening a youth to have conversations on mercury issues, but then also the interlinkages that are happening within the different conventions that are looking at the environmental multilateral agreements, but then also for us to ensure that we are able to map out the hotspots where different projects, one, are already being implemented, or hotspots where such projects can actually be implemented. it's also, I would say, the other quick win, I would say, I think, which would also be a challenge for me, sitting at the UNCCD convention, to sort of already identify a checklist or entry points to be able to have conversations, not siloed conversations about the Minamata Convention, bringing those conversations from Minamata and then bringing them to UNCCD, because again, the youth within UNCCD, while their focus might be only on land restoration, being able to be the interlinkage and telling them, yes, you're focusing on land restoration, restoring degraded land, but what are some of those things that are leading to this degradation of land, right? But then also, I think the last one would be, how can we as young people now start to work together and speak to one another about the work that we're doing? Because by the end of the day, every mercury free processing unit is soil protection, and that equals to food safety and policy in action. I'll hand it over to you, Josh.
Well, Julia, thank you so much for that. I think it was very detailed and in-depth, and I cannot wait to dissect that conversation during one of the following breakout rooms. I am going to call on Wari Bilson, who is with the World Food Forum, is the youth representative with them. Wari, do you want to come on board and talk about how we can connect Minamata's convention goals to Africa's land restoration and food systems agenda, and your personal experiences perhaps with both Minamata and Africa's food systems agenda?
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, good night. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Bilson Wari from Cameroon. I live in the northwest region of Cameroon, and I am a youth representative for the World Food Forum and also the team lead for Youth Association for Climate Action, and I am an environmental engineer. So I'm so happy to be here. I think concerning this, I will start with my experience here in the Northwest region. For the past 8 years now, we have been in conflict. Yes, so I'm trying to now link this to mercury pollution. For the past 8 years, we have been in a social and political conflict, which has really disrupted a lot of systems here, especially the food system. So concerning our realities here, we all know that mercury pollution is something that we don't talk about more often. Yes, we talk about deforestation, we talk about other stuff, but mercury pollution, we don't talk about that. So here in the Northwest region, in the midst of the crisis, a lot of children are being exposed to this contamination. Yes, in the Northwest region, we don't actually have these large mines that they mine this material, mercury, but so it somehow gets back into our region through hospitals and waste treatment centers and other companies. So because of the conflict, a lot of things have been damaged, especially when it comes to the municipal waste collection system. Vehicles are not able to move and collect waste properly. And some hospitals are being burned down, which we all know that this hospital contain a lot of products that are harmful, including mercury. So imagine a hospital being set ablaze and the community is being exposed to these substances. And again, we have abandoned farmlands here around my area, around I think it's 500 meters away. We have farmlands that are being abandoned, and it is being exposed to a lot of contamination. Wastewater treatment systems, they are being destroyed, and these waste systems, they carry a lot of pollutants, including mercury. And mercury, as we all know, is very persistent, and when it gets into the system, we take it directly through, let's say, our food or the water that we consume around us. So connecting this, I think we really need to connect this to the local realities that we have here. The convention, we have to go down to the roots and see how we can shape policies that are really going to help us. Because I am speaking from experience. I didn't actually have maybe prepared something, but we in the Northwest region here and the children, we are really exposed to such pollutant, mercury, and it is harmful.
Thank you. So we'll now have a recorded statement from Lydia Halidi. Lydia is a young biologist and a waste management circular economy specialist from the Republic of Commerce.
Ok, merci beaucoup pour cette invitation. C'est un honneur pour moi de porter la voix des jeunes des pays insulaires en développement, mais en particulier mon pays, les Comores, dans cet espace où se dessinent surtout les différentes priorités pour un avenir plus sain et plus durable. Alors concernant, c'est un sujet bien sûr très important en parlant de la Convention de Minamata, et comment se passe la dépendance des communautés comoriennes vis-à-vis du secteur pêche et aussi du secteur de l'agriculture. En ce qui concerne les Comores, comme nous savons qu'il fait partie des États insulaires en développement et que la communauté comorienne vive surtout de l'agriculture et de la pêche. C'est un socle de sécurité alimentaire et des moyens de subsistance surtout. Les activités qui sont pratiquées majoritairement, c'est artisanal et familial, dont la communauté, par exemple les pêcheurs, dépendent directement des récifs coralliens, des zones côtières, tandis que les agriculteurs, les petits paysans cultivent sur des petites parcelles, souvent exposées à l'érosion et à la sécheresse. Et bien sûr, en matière de changement climatique, les Comores ne sont pas épargnés sur les différents effets du dérèglement climatique. Alors, en ce qui concerne surtout au sujet de l'agriculture et de la pêche, la communauté dépend fortement, mais c'est vrai que la tendance fait que il y a une extrême vulnérabilité à la dégradation environnementale à ce jour. Hein. Il y a quand même des dégradations au niveau de l'environnement et surtout les problèmes liés à la pollution marine, y compris celles liées à la mercure, les déchets qui sont justement jetés dans l'océan, enfin qui finissent dans la nature. Menace la qualité surtout des produits halieutiques et la santé de la population, c'est-à-dire la biodiversité marine. En ce qui concerne les pratiques agricoles, nous avons surtout la déforestation qui accentue la dégradation du sol et de la perte de la biodiversité au fil du temps, quoi. Et donc cela engendre surtout une raréfaction parce que vis-à-vis de ces menaces, ça engendre une raréfaction de ressources naturelles et donc une précarité observée en fait, comme on observe vis-à-vis de la communauté. Donc la santé environnementale dans nos îles, surtout en ce qui concerne le problème lié au mercure, hein, c'est vraiment quelque chose auquel nous devrons porter un intérêt, surtout parce que c'est vraiment un sujet qui est d'actualité, c'est un sujet auquel peut-être souvent dans les instances c'est vraiment pas trop discuter et c'est vraiment intéressant et important surtout d'en parler de ce sujet concernant les déchets liés au mercure. Alors sur notre point, c'est justement face à ces défis, c'est de comprendre que la restauration est importante et surtout cet aspect de restauration ne se fera pas sans une participation active des communautés locales, bien sûr, implicative et inclusive, et surtout des jeunes qui représentent la majorité de la population, que ce soit au niveau mondial, que ce soit au niveau de nos pays respectifs. Ben, dans mon pays, bien sûr, l'implication des jeunes, des différents acteurs hein, vis-à-vis à ces défis. Donc, je pense que c'est très important. Et bien sûr, à travers des initiatives locales, hein, comme les comités qu'on peut placer, par exemple, des comités éco-écoles ou groupements de jeunes, par exemple, ou de groupements intérêts économiques qui sont beaucoup plus l'idée menée par les femmes. Donc, je pense aussi renforcer aussi la sensibilisation pour une prise de conscience autour de la réduction des déchets, surtout dans les zones côtières. C'est vraiment très important. La valorisation surtout de notre savoir-faire sur l'applicabilité des bonnes pratiques éco-responsables au niveau agricole et restaurer aussi nos systèmes dégradés, notamment le reboisement, la reforestation, mais revoir aussi l'approche de reforestation auquel nous faisons. Alors pour les différentes conventions, priorités, bon, je vais parler notamment de pays États insulaires en développement africain. Dans la mise en œuvre des accords environnementaux mondiaux comme la Convention de Minamata.
Without further ado, I want to bring on Brandon Tab. Brandon is a National Geographic Young Explorer from Cameroon. He also works with Afro-Food and African Forest Forum. And Brandon would love to share a little bit of your insights as well on how we're connecting Minamata Convention goals to Africa's land restoration and food systems agenda.
All right. I'm called Tabe Brand Jume. I'm from Cameroon. The Afro-Food Youth representative from Cameroon, and also the Youth Advisory Council for the African Forest Forum. Well, I will be sharing my perspective around indigenous land rights and mercury pollution. Yeah, on a broader note, I think when of mercury pollution, we often focus on the chemical aspect of it, but we often forget the impacts on indigenous people and their land. Normally, in a country like Cameroon, when we hear of a mining being set up in a community, the first thing that comes into your mind is the creation of job opportunities, and you're excited. But however, that doesn't often be the case because the later impacts often overrides the benefit.
All right, it seems we've lost Brandon as well. All right, so we'll just move on to the next breakout session now. Just a huge thank you to all of our speakers so far for sharing their reflections and their lived experiences. I think it's also really important from those who have spoken at the beginning to this moment, helping us see the human faces behind the work that has been done to combat mercury pollution across several regions in Africa. And so we would quickly hop into the next breakout session. Everyone, you'll be added to a breakout room, either in English or in French. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to have someone who join in. Welcome. I think at this point, I would love to get some of our facilitators up. You can raise your hand if you're ready, and you can share with us, what you discussed in your room, any key ideas perhaps that you want to talk about, and recommendations that were made during the discourse in the breakout rooms that can fit into the Global Youth Declaration. I know we've taken notes as well, so we'll look at that in depth at a later time, but if our facilitators want to come on and have a chat, I think that'll be good. Stanley, I see you. Yes, hi Stan.
Yeah, hello Joshua, and hello everyone. Thank you very much for staying up to this time. So I'll just try to be very brief and fast too. So we've had a wonderful breakout sessions for breakout session 1 and 2. I mean, we were just about to dive into the main discussions again. But it has been wonderful, and we've actually had views and opinions from all of us, which are very wonderful. And so one of the questions we asked was about how people think about Mercury's dangers remaining so. How people think about the dangers of Mercury remaining so low despite global efforts. And there was a whole lot of answers to that questions. Because the miners who are involved in this are less considered than registered miners, and people also give issues, contributions like raising awareness about the dangers of mercury on their health. People affected are not represented. There's a gap between multi-stakeholders' efforts. People's efforts are not being represented. And so largely it looks like the efforts of people who are involved in the process are actually not being reflected more than the views of other stakeholders who are at the top levels being reflected more. And so the second question we looked at in the breakout session was the channels through which youths are mostly affected by mercury pollution. And there were a whole lot of views on that. Food and water was one of the major ways, gold mining, one of the major ways, through fish, and yeah, which is also included in food too. And so these are some of the ways: unemployment, worsening poverty in Africa, batteries and technological devices are also ways that we spelled out that African youths are exposed to mercury pollution. In the breakout session 2, we try to look at the priorities that will be reflected in the Global Youth Declaration on Mercury. And some of the priorities that were being spelled out was that there should be a ban on the use of mercury. Companies that import mercury should be regulated. The enforcement of laws on mercury, should be stronger and should be enacted. Most times there is laws, but they are not really so much enforced. Job creation should be prioritized so that people don't go into illegal mining. Education on mercury from primary to high tertiary institutions and levels should also be prioritized. And there's a whole lot of other views that we give concerning that. And so one of the questions we also looked at this last break session was what we think the goals of some of these themes: food system, climate change, nature conservation, or land restorations. What we think about these goals in connection with mercury pollution and how we could drive solutions for that. And some people contributed about advocating for farmer headers crisis, which was a particular case study in Nigeria. Others contributed on work on the policies regarding local seeds. Food policies should be articulated in cultures and heritage, and better food should be there should be awareness on use of eco-friendly ways for cultivating so we could achieve better food. Sustainable agriculture should also be enforced or something. And why finally we were on the last question, which is how government could shift from how government could shift miners to mercury-free methods without worsening poverty, because a lot of miners in the gold mining are actually women, children, and young people. And so the contributions we got from there was the applications of better processes for mining gold could actually be exploration for a better way of mining gold, which is mercury free and not so harmful to the environment, could actually be explored on. So these are some of the views that we got from us during the breakout session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stan. I think I will now turn the floor over to Howard to walk us through the next steps and concluding. Howard?
Amazing. Thank you so much, Joshua, and thank you so much to everyone who has contributed to our conversation today. We are now excuse me, we're now starting to land the plane. And so we are going to just make this invitation for you, each and every one of us who has joined in today. We want to continue the conversation, to give you a wider latitude to contribute more meaningfully into the work that we are putting into the Global Youth Declaration on Mercury and the Youth Policy Interventions for the Minamata COP that is happening in the first week of November. So you have the opportunity. There are QR codes on your screen right now, so you can scan. Firstly, we have the QR code which should be on your left on the Mercury Youth Task Force, and I'm going to say something quickly about that. And then on your right, you have an opportunity in that QR code. If you scanned it, you get access to a form that will give you the opportunity to share with us further your thoughts and aspirations that are going to inform the written submissions for the Youth Declaration. And so for the Youth Task Force, this is really just in the build-up to the Youth Forum on Mercury, which is going to be happening on the 2nd of November on the margins of COP-6 in Geneva. And so the objectives of that task force is first and foremost to shape the agenda, but also to have to understand the substance of the discussion topics and sessions that are going to be at the Youth Forum happening on the margins of COP-6 in Geneva, but also to lead the global outreach efforts to engage children and youth-led organizations ahead of COP-6, but to also identify some of those opportunities for training and learning so that the youth delegates at the COP-6 are better prepared and engaged to contribute meaningfully to the negotiations and advocacy at COP-6. But also the mandate of that task force is to collect, consolidate, and draft some of the inputs from the young people, from the youth worldwide into the Global Youth Declaration on Mercury that we've been talking about. And finally, the mandate of the task force extends also to the promoting of equitable representation, and that goes to Indigenous youth and youth organizations and individual youth from the Global South, but also the frontline communities, especially those that have been most affected by mercury pollution. And so I want to invite you to, if you want to take part in the Youth Task Force, please do scan it and scan that QR code and do share with us your details. We'll be able to get back to you on the question of eligibility. As long as you're 35 years of age and below, you're eligible to take part. But also this could be as an individual or as an organization that is undertaking work on chemicals and waste, and in this context with mercury. And so in terms to time commitment, it's mostly about the meetings we've been having weekly of about 1 hour to 1.5 hours or 1.5 hours on that. So if you can spare some time, please do scan the QR code and then sign up to be part of the Mercury Youth Task Force. When it comes to the Youth Declaration, again, if you scan the QR code on your right, you will be led to an interface, to a form that will get you to share with us some of your details, but also to share with us some of your thoughts and aspirations over and above what we have shared today that are going to inform the Youth Declaration on Mercury and the youth policy interventions for the Minamata COP happening from the 2nd to the 7th of November in Geneva in Switzerland, and we've been working around that. And so we've had a series of engagements across the regions, and our engagement today has been the African Consultation. And so these dialogues really were intended to collect and be able to receive the youth perspectives and recommendations and priorities ahead of COP-6, which are going to then be synthesized into the Global Youth Declaration on Mercury, which fundamentally is a youth-authored document highlighting priorities, actionable recommendations, and strategies for broader youth engagement. But over and above everything, even in our engagement today, we've been looking at the effectiveness of engaging as many more young people on matters Mercury in the Gonda scheme of chemicals and waste. So we want to extend those efforts to support as many more young people to understand first and foremost Mercury related issues, but to also enable them with that understanding, because you cannot influence what you do not understand. If you want to influence global policy on Mercury management, then we need to ensure that young people who in many communities, especially here in Africa, are affected by Mercury, that young people understand what the problem is, but more importantly, how they can contribute to the solution. And so this dialogue, this consultation, in light of all the other consultations that we've been having under Chemicals and Waste Youth Platform, have been geared towards that, in a sense, amplifying the aspirations and voices of young people when it comes to Mercury related issues, even as we prepare for the Mercury COP, the Minamata COP-6 happening in Geneva from the 2nd to the 7th of November. So we want to thank you so much, and in a very special way, I would like to thank each and every one of you who has dedicated your time to join us. It's been, over coming to 2 hours or so, actually, of very insightful, very engaging deliberations and discussions. And our hope is that we'll continue to stay engaged and to contribute meaningfully in the amplification in this context of the African youth voice in shaping Mercury management at the international level, but also cascading the international discourse to the local and community and grassroots levels where the impacts of the mismanagement of Mercury are affected. So I want to thank you so much. I also want to thank my colleagues, part of the leadership of the Chemicals and Waste Youth Platform, Shannon, Joshua, every single one of us who has contributed in one way or another to the success of our consultation today. Thank you so much. And without much ado, I'd like to invite all of us to turn on our cameras so we can get to take a group photo, and that will be very important. So don't forget, please scan the QR codes and be more meaningfully involved. If you have any question, please do not hesitate to reach out to me, to reach out to Joshua, to reach out to Stanley, to reach out to Shannon. We'll be more than happy to respond to you. But also some of those questions, you can ask those questions on our groups already. Many of you are part of those platforms, so please do not hesitate. And yeah, so that is about it. Let's turn on our videos so we can take the group photo. Okay, great.
We'll just
Right.
give everybody a chance to turn the cameras on if you're comfortable. We could get a nice family photo. I mean, you spent 3 hours with us, so we might as well document our time together. So, see, people are still turning their cameras on, so I'll give another minute or so.
Thank you so much, everyone who's made it today and stayed with us for about 3 hours. We're looking forward to seeing those of you who are going to be physically present at Minamata in Geneva, and looking forward to you contributing to the Global Youth Declaration on Mercury as well. Have an amazing rest of the morning, afternoon, or evening. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Yeah.